Um, okay, so actually, what I wanted to do today, and we're kind of like doing a little bit of a detour here, um, because well, the Son of Man part, the Son of Man part is definitely part of the priest narrative, right, and part of the priest theme, I should say. Of course, when you talk about the Son of Man, the idea of him being a priest is included in that. And when we see Jesus, confronting the high priest and the Sanhedrin, or being confronted, they've got that mock trial against him and everything. It can be seen as a high priest showdown, and so we're going to see, the real high priest in the order of Melchizedek, in a face-off with the Levitical high priest, who wants to condemn the Messiah basically to death. And so there's something severely wrong with that picture, and there's something severely wrong with the the heart and the mindset of the religious leadership that's going on in Jerusalem at that time. So then you see priest versus priest, and then you're going to see a bit later on that the priests are confronting people like uh, Stephen, who I'm going to bring up, I think, next time. And Stephen is talking in front of the priest, and he basically says a couple confrontational things towards the priest and the leaders that are there, and he gets killed. So, and what does he do when he's being stoned? Is that he sees the Son of Man. So he has the image of what Jesus was talking about, and so it's part of a thread there, and we'll get more into that. But I don't want to we've never really covered the Daniel 7 in depth very much, and we've never really covered that Son of Man passage in Daniel. So I kind of wanted to go and take a couple detours or whatever. I'm also waiting a little bit for the Bible Project to catch up on some of their videos, because they're not done with all of their priest series or whatever. So we've got time, and I don't really have like that much of like an agenda. But they made a video here that I really liked about the Son of Man, and I'm going to play it today. But we'll probably come back to it because it's very dense. There's a lot here. You probably catch everything that they're saying in this video, based on things that we've covered before. Things like the beast, things like the nature of Babylon and exile, and things. There's a lot of themes that kind of like come together here, but you'll see what I mean. But it's worth kind of like stopping and seeing this, because they give kind of like a quick 6-minute big picture of the Son of Man idea. So here we go.
If you read the New Testament, you'll notice that the most common title people use to describe Jesus is the Christ. That is, the Messiah.
But surprisingly, Jesus almost never used that word to describe himself. Instead, he called himself the Son of Man.
The Son of Man. What does that mean?
Well, the phrase comes from an important chapter in the book of Daniel in the Old Testament. Daniel was an Israelite prisoner of war who was forced to live in the empire of Babylon and work for the prideful, violent king who destroyed his home.
That sounds cool.
And while he was living and working in Babylon, Daniel had this crazy prophetic dream. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
He saw 4 beasts crawling out of the dark sea, hybrid monster-like animals, each scarier than the one before. And the 4th beast is so mutant, there's nothing to compare it to. And it's violent, leaving death and destruction in its wake.
What in the world is this about?
Well, he's told that these beasts symbolize violent, prideful kings and their empires.
Oh, like the one Daniel's enslaved to.
Yeah, and these creatures might seem random to you, but these images are developing an important biblical theme. how humans are these remarkable creatures, capable of doing great good and horrible evil.
How we can behave like animals.
Right. Look at the first pages of the Bible. God creates the beasts of the field and humans together, all from the dust. But then the humans are set apart and given a royal task of being God's image.
So humans are like the animals, but called to become much more.
Yeah, they're to be God's representatives on earth, ruling on his behalf, like kings and queens. But keep reading, and the humans are deceived by a beast who says that they could be more than just God's partners.
Yeah, but they could rule the world on their own terms, which sounds good for them.
But God knows this will be a disaster. And so he expels the humans to the realm of the beasts.
The partnership is lost.
But God makes a promise that one day a human will be born who won't give in to the beast. Rather, he'll overcome and strike the beast while being struck by it.
Okay, so for the rest of the biblical story, we're waiting for that human. But instead, story after story, we find people acting like beasts.
Yeah, like in the next story about Cain, who's jealous and angry at his brother Abel. God warns Cain that he's facing a beastly urge called sin, a dark, mysterious kind of evil that consumes humans. But God says that Cain can rule the beast if he chooses.
But he doesn't rule the beast, he lets this urge devour him.
Yeah, so just a reminder that sin is crouching at your door. You've got this kind of beast language of the thing, something, crouching at his door, and it desires to have you, but you must rule over it. So that is a beast theme very early on in the Bible.
And he becomes a beast.
And then after this, Cain's children spread their animal-like violence, and it leads to the founding of a whole civilization known for its beastly pride, the city of Babylon.
Okay, Babylon. So fast forward, this is where Daniel is enslaved, having this bizarre dream.
Exactly. Now, watch what happens next in Daniel's dream. He sees into God's throne room where a court is set up, and God condemns the beast to destruction.
That's great.
And then Daniel sees that there's actually more than one divine throne.
Oh, right, the throne that humanity left behind.
Right. There hasn't been a human who's able to overcome the beast and rule alongside God until now. Daniel sees a figure called the Son of Man, which means a human. And he rides on a cloud up into God's presence and then sits down on the divine throne to rule the world.
The partnership's renewed.
Yes, and even more, all humanity worships and serves this Son of Man alongside God.
Worship. So this is no ordinary human. This is like a god human.
Exactly. And so now you can see why Jesus of Nazareth, when he came onto the scene centuries later, chose this title, the Son of Man, for himself. He was claiming to be that truly human one on the mission to confront the beast.
He was tempted to seize power on the beast's terms.
But unlike every human before him, Jesus resisted the urge. And then he went about managing the beast for people's lives, and he was teaching people how to rule the beast instead of being ruled by it.
Okay, so how do you rule the beast?
Well, Jesus did it by giving him his life.
Wait, rule the beast by dying?
Yes, when Jesus was on trial in a human courtroom and being condemned to death, he said, "From this moment on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at God's right hand and coming on the clouds."
So this is
I'm going to pause here because I'm going to be bringing this up, is that when he's in the courtroom, he is basically, by saying that he's the Son of Man and referring to Daniel chapter 7, if you kind of add 2 and 2 together, it's like, well, if you're the Son of Man figure about to ride the cloud up to heaven, then the setting of this court drama, what is he calling them? It's kind of like if I put on a Darth Vader outfit and I go up to you and say, like you are, like I am your father, then like then like the person I'm talking to must be Luke, right? But so by implication, it's kind of he's connecting the high priest and the Sanhedrin at that point with the beast. So it's interesting.
moment he's about to die.
Exactly. From one perspective, the cross looks like a beastly torture device. But Jesus viewed it as his throne. And on this throne, he exposed the subhuman nature of our evil by letting it do its worst. And then he overcame it with his divine life. Jesus' execution was his exaltation.
So Jesus is the first human to overcome the beast. And as a result, he can partner with God to rule the world.
So now, Jesus is summoning a new humanity into existence, one that can overcome the beast in the same paradoxical way.
To rule the beast by dying.
And then by discovering that Jesus' life and power can become our life and power. So we can rule the world as God's partners, but Jesus style, in the power of service, humility, and self-giving love.
All right. Let's share. This one. Yeah, so so we have here the High Priest Showdown. Actually, one of the beasts that we're going to be seeing here is going to resemble some actual art from the Babylonian period. I don't know if you've ever seen this kind of a figure before, a lion with wings on it, or sometimes like you see a bull with wings on it. But this is very Babylonian. I think this was taken at some gates or something, or it's a replica of some of that art. But you're going to see a description that of the first beast that is going to resemble um, images that you would have seen in Babylon at the time. So here's Daniel's vision of the four beasts, and so we're just going to go through the whole of Daniel chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. So this is the setting of Nebuchadnezzar is no longer king, and so this is his. I believe it's his grandson, Belshazzar, king of Babylon. Daniel saw a dream and visions in his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. So he writes it down and then he tells about what he saw. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. The Great Sea, a lot of commentators are going to say that that represents the nations, right? It does represent the nations, but what we've already seen about the Great Sea is that from Genesis 1 on, it's that sea of chaos. It's those chaos waters. And the reason that the nations are sometimes depicted as the Great Sea or the chaos waters is because the powers that rule the nations are agents of chaos. So of course you're going to see pictures of, say, Babylon or Egypt or these oppressive empires as a great sea, because it's they're kind of chaos. They're chaos agents or chaos monsters. And so that's why you see the same thing in Revelation as well. The beast that's described in Revelation, comes out of the sea. Verse 3, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. So just like that first picture that we saw. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. So what do you think that refers to? Do you remember in Daniel chapter 4, we have that story of Nebuchadnezzar that he tells himself, and that he's looking over his own kingdom and talking about how great everything is. But he has a dream where he is a great tree that's chopped down, and then long story short, remember, he becomes like a beast, right? And he loses his mind or his sanity, and he eats the grass of the field like a wild ox. And and it's after 7 times that he is restored. And at that time, he acknowledges and gives honor to Yahweh, and then he's restored. So what this first beast is a picture of Nebuchadnezzar and his kingdom. And so what it is that, he is a beast, but at one time, the beastly elements are taken off of him, and he's put upright to stand like a man and given the mind and heart of a man. And what it's telling you is that he no longer really belongs in that whole category of being a beast. Yeah, it's still something that happens to this beast, but there's something different about it. It doesn't happen with any of the other beasts. And it tells you that that these other beasts are doing things out of their, like the cartoon showed you. When man goes off on his own, then the Bible says, yeah, you turn into a beast. You lose your humanity to a degree, and that's kind of the point. Humanity is restored at the time somebody acknowledges God and starts doing things God's way. And so this is a beautiful picture of that. So he's lifted up from the ground, and he's made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it, and it's actually, quite a few steps up. It doesn't mean that he's diminished in his power or anything, because all of these beasts are very powerful. So it's not to say that these kingdoms of men diminish in power. Beasts are powerful. These beasts are powerful, and they are uh, and they have a lot of authority, but they're still beasts. The So, verse 5, and behold, another beast, a second one like a bear. It was raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. So um the you have the Babylonian Empire, but the following empire is the Medo-Persian Empire, right? It's the Medes and the Persians together forming an empire. But that empire is lopsided because the Persians end up having way more power than the Medes do. So here you have a depiction of a bear, but it's lopsided. It was raised on one side, so the strength of it is going up to one side. And it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, arise, devour much flesh. So here's just a picture of, I put this in the wrong place, but you have the lion, you have the bear with the ribs in its mouth. It's supposed to be on one side. Then you're going to have a leopard with wings, and it's got 4 heads, and then you're going to have a beast with 10 horns on it, a terrifying beast, not like the others. It looks like a T-Rex, yeah. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So after the Medo-Persian Empire, you have Alexander the Great. He rushes, through a bunch of the world, and he takes over it. And so you've got this idea of speed, and you've got this idea of him sweeping and conquering the world very quickly. But he sets up, and it's got 4 heads. It's not exactly it's not exactly you could say that the Greek Empire ends up being split into 4 parts: the Ptolemies, the Seleucids, uh, Cassander, and I forget, but and some people would say, well, it should be 5 or whatever. But you have basically it gets kind of divided into 4 parts, kind of in this vision. But this is the Greek Empire, right? After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, terrifying and dreadful, exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces, and was stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it. It had 10 horns. So this would naturally lead in our minds to the Roman Empire, right? And that you're going to have that exceedingly strong, like, because of the brute force of, say, the Roman Empire, and the way, its military strength was, you had military strength for sure in the other empires, but there was a little bit more of a cultural emphasis. There were some other things, whereas the Roman Empire was very, brute in its force. You are going to have some people that are going to argue with this, and it depends on really, like, from the point of view of where you're looking from. So if you're looking from the point of view of, say, Jerusalem, then you're going to say, yeah, definitely the next big empire after this is going to be Rome, right? If you're in the citadel of Susa, which he's later in the, Daniel chapter 8, and I'm not really sure about, like, Babylon, because I guess Mesopotamia and this area was ruled by the Romans, to a degree. But but say somebody like Joel Richardson is going to, insist that what we're talking about is not the Roman Empire, but the Muslim Caliphate. And the way that he thinks of it is that it's different, and it stamps out whatever's in front of it, because um, you know uh, because it stamps out people's cultures. So if you look at what was left from the Babylonians, and they kind of continue, the Babylon Empire kind of continues in its culture, overlapping into the other empires. The Greeks obviously had a lot of influence long after they were taken down. Um, Even in Jerusalem, the main language there is still Greek, and it's not Latin, even in Jesus' time. So like, what he's describing is that whatever the Roman Caliphate touched, and this is a bit later, 600 AD, in the 600s AD, then that kind of stomps out everything. So so you got to start looking at, like, at this point you're going, okay, it's talking about, like, these world empires going from Nebuchadnezzar. But at some point in all of these prophecies, we get this element of, wait a minute, something's happened in the middle of me reading this. And are we talking about what happened, like, in the Roman Empire? Or are we talking about something that's happening in the future? And I think that, everybody's got their systems, but, to say, well, it must be part of the Roman Empire, but maybe it's the Roman Catholic Church, or maybe it's a country, maybe the horn that's going to come later is part of the former Roman Empire that's going to be revived. But then you could make arguments about, yeah, but maybe it's Turkey and the revived Ottoman Empire, and the Caliphate returning. There's and there's talk about the renewing of the Caliphate, or you could talk about it in other terms, right? So you're going to see that the prophecies in Daniel fit like 80%, of a lot of things. So you could say, well, yeah, but you can't deny that it is in part talking about Rome, right? So when we see the rest of this unfold, then we can see that, yeah, it does look like Christ is going to come during the Roman Empire. But I think the point is that if you're trying to pinpoint everything, and then you might lose the forest for the trees, because this is a theme that has been going through the Bible the whole time. We just saw the Bible Project's presentation, and one of the reasons I like it is that whenever we talk about the beast, we usually think of who's the beast going to be, or where is he going to come from, and we try to talk about one thing. And ultimately, there will be somebody like that, right? But you lose the whole story about the whole beast theme, about a beast talking to Adam and Eve and them getting kicked out of the garden, and then especially Cain being lured by the beast, which is uh, sin, crouching in his door, and then his offspring ending up in Babel, which is Babylon, years later, and you're going, and this everything starts like you're starting to see like this Babylonian beast, because the first beast mentioned here is Babylon, and then when you get to Revelation, there's still a lot of connections to Babylon, or the idea of Babylon. And even Babylon itself is not a firm idea. Like, you're going, wait a minute, is physical Babylon going to be restored? And that's going to be a world power, because that's a lot of people in their eschatology think, well, Babylon's going to have to be restored, like literal Babylon. And that's on some people's radar. But the idea is that no, these ideas of the beast and everything. This is scripture wide. It's not just about the beast and the mark of the beast as we tend to think about it. This is something that you can look at these prophecies and realize that you're talking about multiple scenarios that can be described this way. So a bit later, what's going to happen, and this happens even before the Roman Empire, is that uh, Antiochus Epiphanes is going to roll along in the during the Greek Empire, and he is going to demolish the temple, basically torture and kill Jews, and slaughter a pig on. I've heard, I think there's a story about him slaughtering a pig in the temple, but in any case, he turns it into a temple for Zeus. It turns into a place of pagan worship, and it's a total abomination that causes desolation, right? And then when Jesus comes along, then he starts talking about, so when you see the abomination that causes desolation, um, he's talking about something that hasn't happened yet for him, right? So he's warning them. And then some people take that warning, because they see, they start getting wind of things that will. There's actually somebody who prophesies 3.5 years before it happens, but the destruction in AD 70 happens, and it fits a lot of the patterns of the abomination that causes desolation and the beast. Um, and uh, and if you read some of the historical events that happened to it, Christians actually escape from there. And they know to escape, especially when they see the Romans surrounding the city. If you're there, get out of the city. It sounds very familiar. It's, Matthew 24. So, but then for us, we're like, okay, but it didn't fulfill everything. So you have a series of already but not yet. And you can, like you look at like the Third Reich and Hitler and the persecution of Jews then, and that fit a lot of patterns that you see about, and that was definitely beast behavior, right? So there's things that repeat, and so when we see things nowadays that are happening, it's completely appropriate to go, wait, we're seeing beast behavior, and we see how this can go. These are men's ideas, and when you start doing that, you can end up with like these crazy ideologies that mean well but cause destruction and are ultimately oppressive. We see that developing now. Um, does it mean that the Antichrist is coming? I don't know, but it's going to be a type of it, you know. So sometimes, like, yeah, you're looking for a single tree, but don't lose sight of the forest. So it had great iron teeth that devour and broken pieces. I'm back in verse 7. and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So these horns, I've been thinking a little bit more about the horns idea. In short, yeah, we're talking about leaders or kings, right? Horns, but horns are also this. It comes from the symbol of victory. So you'll see some psalms that say, God is going to lift up your horn, right? The idea is this, if you see an animal like a bull or something like that, and it's lifting up its horns, it's like this I won, right? It's kind of like this proud moments, and an animal lifting up its horns, it's like lifting up its head and its horns going up. And so if you lifted up a horn, like in victory, it's kind of like, yeah, like, we win, or I won, or something like that. So a horn was something that you lifted up. It's not a horn to like blow or whatever. You can do that too, but it's just like, there we go. It's like this gesture, right? So it's kings, and it's 10 people, or yeah, 10 kings or 10 leaders that have been victorious and have become powerful. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which three of the first horns were plucked up by its roots. So three of them are removed. Some of this does resemble, the rising up of Antiochus Epiphanes. But what we're seeing is that there's going to be, so if you talk to Joel Richardson, then he sees 10 countries in the Middle East, and then 10 powers, and then one kind of rising up from obscurity in the Middle East area, and it's connected to Islam. It's possible, right? And behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So we don't actually have, it's interesting that you have the eyes of a man. Um, well, yeah, it is going to be a man, but it's going to there's going to be something that seems very human about him in the context of this chapter, where we're talking about, Nebuchadnezzar being restored and the heart of a man was given to him. I'm wondering what that means. I'm wondering if it's that there's something that seems religiously right about him. You see what I'm saying? I don't know I don't really know what to make of it. I haven't read anything that I'm going, oh, it must be that. But it's interesting. It's just something to keep in your mind, that like in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So, or is this just an emphasis on somebody's humanism? There's some other hints that seem to be like that the Antichrist at some point is going to be a figure that is that doesn't worship any of the original gods of the people that he came from, and that sort of thing. So it might be like some kind of a secularist or something. We don't know. We will not know until it's happening. There's no way that you could have like looked at the life of Christ afterwards. Hindsight is 2020, and you can go, well, how come the disciples are always so lost, right? And they're going, wait, are you going? Wait, what's going on? And they're confused the whole time. But there's no way that you could have seen it. And then once it's happened, then you're going, okay, everything points to Christ, and this fits it fits the Son of Man. It fits all of the Messiah prophecies, suffering servant. We get it, okay? And then you can start putting things together. Um, but it's going to be that way also with the Antichrist. That there's going to be a lot of things that aren't going to make sense to us. So I'd be leery about sticking onto like one particular system. And what I mean system is that people who go, well, and I've done this too, like where I drop a bunch of charts and then we're going to look at this many days, and then we're going to do this. This happens before this, and it's kind of like, um, I don't know. I'm becoming a lot more careful about that kind of stuff, just because I think in all of that stuff you lose some of the story. Um, so the Ancient of Days rules, verse 9. As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. This is obviously Father God, right? His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and wheels were of burning fire. So that whole clothing was like snow, and the hair of pure wool. In the you're going to see Christ um, in Revelation, where he's described in some of these terms, with the head of pure white, the hair of pure white, and stuff like that. So it's kind of like father, like son language. So he's looking like the Ancient of Days in Revelation. His throne was fiery flames; its wheels were burning fire. Sounds a little bit like Ezekiel there. Verse 10, a stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. So this is a divine council scene, right? There's going to be some declarations, and there's a lot of people involved in this. And the books were opened. Verse 11, I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking. And as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. And as for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season at a time. Like I said, their dominion is taken away, but the lives of those cultures went on for a time. And that's maybe what it's talking about, is that Babylonia kind of still went on. The Persian Empire kind of morphed into the Parthian Empire. They were still kind of they gave the Romans a lot of trouble. Of course, Greek culture endured, and there was Hellenism affects us to this day. The Son of Man is given dominion, though. Verse 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like the Son of Man. So he is coming to, he's going towards the throne, right? Where did he come from? And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. So he is coming from somewhere else. He wasn't in heaven to begin with, or he not in this scenario. And to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So here's Daniel's vision interpreted. As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. I approached one of those who stood there. So there's all these angels and beings over there. I stood one who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. These four great beasts are four kings who shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Then I desired to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. And about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, and before which 3 of them fell, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things that seemed greater than its companions. I don't know why I got that repeated. As I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came. And judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. I think I'm missing a verse in there. No. Um, no, I'm not. So as I looked, this horn made war with the saints. So that small horn does make war with the saints and prevailed over them. So he actually, and in Revelation, it says that he is given power over them until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High. We're talking the day of the Lord scenario. And the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. So here you have the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. You have this intimate connection between the Son of Man, to whom all the kingdom is given, and the saints, because ultimately it's the saints who possess the kingdom. But there's also this connection between the Son of Man and him riding the cloud, and it puts him in the context of the saints being trampled by the little horn, right? So it's in the context of them being persecuted or being overpowered, that one of them comes in, that comes riding on the cloud and is presented before the Ancient of Days. Verse 23 said, "Thus he said, as for the fourth beast, there shall be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces." So, yeah, Rome was very powerful. The whole earth, it could be a figure of speech, you know. Sometimes the whole earth doesn't exactly mean the whole earth in scripture. But, you know, if we're looking at something in the future, it's definitely something that can take over the whole earth and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom, 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. So he's going to say things against God, and he's going to wear out the saints, whatever that means, of the Most High, and shall come to change the times and the law. Not sure what all that means. Okay, and I've read some things. I don't know if anybody's really there's some theories about that. And they shall be given into his hand for a time. So think of that. They shall be given into his hand for a time. So God is going to allow it. We're talking again about God's sovereignty, where he is going to allow the saints to be overcome by this beast. I'm not a pre-trib. I'm not a pre-tribber. And I think it's a little bit difficult to reconcile a lot of these, even just concepts like we just saw, you know, like with the whole pre-trib idea. Well, this is actually, you know, like tribulation saints. Yeah, they're still saints. There's no, you know, and to me, tribulation saints are just saints that are there at the tribulation. I don't know, you know, like there's this whole, you know, like, oh, the church is taken out, but then you've got the tribulation saints, and I don't know. You know, Jesus and many Christians have all gone through all kinds of tribulation and faced some kind of beast or whatever else, you know, and the people, the saints that are coming out of the tribulation in Revelation and coming under the altar of incense are just as representative of all of the saints that have died through history because of their faith as any group that might come later that is attached to the time of the Antichrist, so to speak. So again, it's one of those things that the saints have been persecuted, and it's us, being trampled by the beast and still being faithful to Christ and doing it in a Christ-like manner that sets us apart, and makes us followers of Christ who succumbed to the actions of the beast. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, that is the Antichrist, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. So there again, we have this attachment of, because Christ did what, this is Christ, the Son of Man, but the way Scripture always starts talking about the Son of Man in those terms, Scripture always ends up talking about us in those terms. Those who follow Christ start being treated with the same kind of language. So, the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of all the kingdoms of the whole heavens shall be given, and you expect it to end with, to the Son of Man, right? I mean, just think of like the first part of this sentence. It almost sounds like it's going to say, shall be given to the Son of Man, right? And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the Son of Man. No, it says to the people of the saints of the Most High. So there, the Son of Man is representative of the saints. It's he saved them so that they could have that relationship with God again. But because they have that relationship with God again, their kingdom is this kingdom is theirs, and it's theirs to not only be in, but it's theirs to rule. They rule along with the Son of Man. This is a theme that goes all the way through Scripture. You see this. It's not just New Testament. This is like meditating just on Daniel 7 alone. Things like this, you're going, there's such an attachment to Christ and his followers, and just like he's a priest and a king, we become priests and kings. Just as he is a sacrifice, then we become living sacrifices. And him being going through death and being resurrected means that we will die but be resurrected. It's like all of those things get echoed in his followers, and he is the first fruits of all of that. And but the language always turns then in the end to his followers, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. So it's kind of like, wait a minute, were we talking about the people of the saints, or are we talking about are we talking about this particular Son of Man? And it's like it's in the same breath. So read it all together. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Here's the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. So we'll kind of like leave off there. But I wanted to kind of get a full flavor of Daniel 7 and some of the reasons that people freaked out about him calling himself the Son of Man. It seemed like more of a heavy thing to them than him just saying that he's the Messiah. I'm not. I think that a lot of them may have put two and two together and go, "Well, the Messiah's got to be the Son of Man figure, right?" But but he's definitely saying he's the second Yahweh figure. Why, and it's you could say, well, there's someone like the Son of Man in heaven. Well, he's a human, yeah, but there's something odd about this because he's being worshipped like you worship God. Nobody worships the angels or any other human or anything like that. That's not proper, right? Um, but it's proper, and it's not only allowed, but it's mandated apparently by the Ancient of Days to worship this man who's sitting at my right hand. So for Jesus to, end up at the Sanhedrin and say that, that's loaded. You know, um, we'll pick this up a little bit more next week. Otherwise, we'll run really long tonight. Kind of break it up into two things. So, anybody have any responses or questions about it? Or I didn't want to get too bogged down in the eschatology of it. So mostly, a lot of people will go to the Daniel chapter 7 for an eschatology study. How are things going to unfold in the last days? But I think the more important part of it really is the idea that the Son of Man is raised up from all of that and has victory over the beast, and I don't think I think most people wouldn't have seen it, that that the Son of Man himself would be trampled by the beast, so to speak.
Where does it say that?
Where does it say that?
Well,
He tries to.
well, no. What I'm saying is that, like, when Jesus is crucified, okay,
Right.
it's an apparent victory for the beast forces, right? Okay, but Jesus sees it as his coronation and his victory. So in the Messiah figure that we saw last time, we saw that he was going to be lifted up, right? Well, you see that in Daniel 7, right? You see the Son of Man lifted up, and he's brought, and he's exalted, right? But Isaiah says, and he will be marred beyond any human recognition. Right after he says something about him being lifted up. And you're going, well, that's interesting, because you can go, okay, the Son of Man thing, but then you see he's also going to be really messed up. And he's going to use that blood to sprinkle many nations. So he's acting as the priest who's spattering the nation and cleansing them with his own blood, like the priest would in a temple to consecrate the place, right? And purify it, make it ritually clean, cleanse it. So when you put together, you don't have an explicit thing here in Daniel 7 about the forces of darkness having tortured Christ or worn him out or that sort of thing. You have that language about his followers. Where you have that about the saints, right? That the saints are handed over to the beast for a while, but then it starts talking about the beast is defeated And you can start thinking, well, the beast is defeated because this Son of Man figure gets lifted up. It's like what's the connection there? You have Son of Man is lifted up, saints are being trampled by the beast or whatever, but are not trampled. I'm confusing the language there a little bit, with the Roman Empire trampling things or whatever that beast is, but uh, being worn out, being going under persecution and that sort of thing. So, but what we see in Christ's story is that he is handed over willfully. I mean, he's obedient in this, and the Father hands him over for a time to be mishandled by the beast. And it's because of what he undergoes, um, because of that, and is killed and everything, that he's raised up on a cross, um, but he's also, but he's also lifted up afterwards, and that is his victory. His victory is because he is handed over to the enemy for a while, and he's killed, and that sort of thing. So it echoes what you see the saints going through in Daniel 7. So when you kind of put it all together, and you have this, what you see about the suffering servant and everything in Isaiah, then you know that the suffering servant, if he is the same character as the Daniel 7 Son of Man, that he will suffer. And he is going to suffer for many nations and sprinkle the blood. It's like all of those themes they start linking together. It's like these all of these hyperlinks. And so when you get to the part where Jesus starts saying, at his trial, from now on you will see the Son of Man, um, you know,
Seated at the right-
being taken up. Let me see,
seated
where's
at the right hand.
seated at the right hand of the Father. Yeah, but like on the clouds, right? Um, so let me see. I got this.
Did any of those that were in that room hearing him speak and knew that he was according to scripture?
Okay, so Jesus remained silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Right? Jesus said to him, you have said so, but I tell you. So he's like, yeah, you've said that, but I'm going to tell you something even bigger. But I tell you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. I am the cloud rider who's going to be. And why is he saying from now on? It's because he is being subjected to the things that the saints were subjected to in Daniel 7. He's making it's not just that he's like in a showdown between, like, you say that you're the high priest, but I'm the real high priest. He's implicating them, actually. So he's saying, like, if I'm the cloud rider coming up from there and you're about to kill me, what does that make you? See what I'm saying? You make the connections there. So it's doubly offensive. He's saying, because of what you're about to do, um, you sound just like the beast in Daniel 7, or you seem connected to him. We know that it's going to be, like from Daniel 7, you could make a good case to say, oh, it's the Roman Empire that's going to do this. But then you're the one who's going to, you're the Jew who's going to hand over another Jew to the Roman Empire so that they can kill me because you wanted it done, right? And so not only are you, we saw this in The Chosen, that like it's a big deal for one Jew to hand in another Jew to the Romans. You know, it's kind of like we may have our disagreements, but it's not cool for a member of your own people, for you to treat them that way, for you to, you know, use the Romans to go after your brother, your fellow Jew, you know. And not only that, but the person that you're handing over, is the Son of Man. This is the one that you've been waiting for, who is going to free you from Roman oppression. The one that you're thinking of, that's going to free you from Roman oppression. You're about to help the Romans. You're basically going to ask the Romans to kill him for you. So what does that make you? Okay, I may as well go on with this because this is where it gets good. I may have to repeat this next week or whatever, but I'm not going into all this. So then the high priest tears his robe, and this is blasphemy and all this. Okay, then when you get to Acts 7, think of this: the Stephen, he's in front of the high priest in the beginning of Acts 7, and the high priest said, "Are these things so?" And Stephen goes into this whole history of Israel, right? And then he concludes it and he goes, "Brothers and fathers." So he's saying brothers and fathers, fellow Jews, right? And fathers, you know, the priests and everything. "Hear me, you stiff-necked people, uncircumcised in heart and ears. You always resist the Holy Spirit. As your fathers did, so do you. Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who announced beforehand the coming of the righteous one, whom you have now betrayed and murdered." So he's saying, yeah, and they killed those who announced beforehand the coming of the righteous one, whom you have now betrayed and murdered. You received the law as delivered by angels and did not keep it. Now, when they heard these things, they were enraged and they ground their teeth at him. But he, full of the Holy Spirit, gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. This is the Son of Man. And he said, "Behold, I see the heavens opened and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." So you have Stephen becomes this believer who is being received by the Son of Man in Daniel 7. So you have this picture of like, wait, who is this horn, and who is this beast and the Antichrist, or whatever we want to call him, that is wearing out the saints? In this picture, it's still the religious authorities. And who is Stephen going to go see? He's going to go see the Son of Man and rule with him, right? So it's the same thing. And he tells them basically what their problem is right before that. And that's why they're mad at him. Same thing as what Jesus did, right? "But they cried out with a loud voice and stopped their ears, and they rushed together at him. Then they cast him out of the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their garments at the feet of a young man named Saul." Just think of that whole scenario. And Saul is part of that whole beast system, right? At that point. "And as they were stoning Stephen, he called out, 'Lord Jesus, receive my spirit.'" This sounds like Jesus on the cross, receive my spirit, right? "And falling on his knees, he cried out with a loud voice, 'Lord, do not hold this sin against them.'" Just like Christ did. He's acting like Christ this whole time. So the things that Jesus said when he was being crucified and being handed over to the beast are the same kinds of things that Stephen is doing. He's calling them out and he's saying who the Son of Man is, but he's being persecuted for it. And he's saying, "God, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Just like Christ did. And like that's in Luke, I forget which chapter, but Christ, and I've read commentators, "Oh, he must be talking about the Romans because the Jews knew what they were doing." And no, it's like anybody who was crucifying him. He's just saying this for the people. Jesus was saying that for the people that were crucifying him, because he doesn't see these people as the beast directly. He sees them as the 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 thing that they've become because of their thinking and a system and a mindset and something bigger, right? As Lord, forgive them for being the beast. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how they're acting. They think they're doing the right thing, and that's what. And so Stephen reflects that attitude. It's really amazing, like how this story connects with um, the last two things that we covered. Then when we get to Revelation, you got the two witnesses, because you're thinking there's something severely wrong with Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the place, like, yes, where, Jesus is going to have his temple and all these great things, and it's God's city and David's city and all that kind of thing. But it's also acting like the beast. It's become Babylon, and it's become, we saw that like with the Magi, the Magi. Remember when we did that? Okay. Well, here you see a little bit more of that. The two witnesses. Then I was giving a measuring rod. This is John speaking, and I was told, "Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave that out, for it is given over to the nations, and they will trample the city for 42 months. And I will grant," there's that trampling language again. That's interesting. Um, if you're thinking about that beast that's trampling everything. "And I will grant authority to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy for 3.5 years, 1260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of this earth. And if anyone would harm them, fire pours out from their mouth and consumes their foes." By the way, this is Revelation 11. Okay. "If they have the power to shut up the sky that no rain may fall during the days of their prophesying, they have the powers over waters to turn them into blood and strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they desire. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that rises from the bottomless pit will make war on them and conquer them and kill them." So the beast is going to kill them, right? More saints that are going to be run over by the beast and killed by the beast. "And their dead bodies will lie on the street of the great city that is symbolically called Sodom and Egypt, where their Lord was crucified." So where is this? Where their Lord was crucified was in Jerusalem, right? But it says, "But their dead bodies will lie in the street of the great city that symbolically is called Sodom and Egypt." And I'll give you a hint that those are not compliments. Yeah, you know, that is like Revelation. He's calling Jerusalem Sodom and Egypt. This is like, um, you know, for their debauchery and for their oppression. So there's something severely wrong with Jerusalem. And again, here you have, the whole idea um, that they that there's a religious system, or a religious system that is there's something really wrong with it, and it has become Egypt. It's become oppressive, just like the Sanhedrin was. Verse 9, "For 3.5 days, some of the people in the tribes and languages and nations will gaze at their dead bodies and refuse to let them be placed in the tomb. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them and make merry and exchange presents, because these two prophets had been a torment to those who dwell on the earth. But after the 3.5 days, a breath of life from God entered them." So they're resurrected. "And they stood up on their feet. So they died and were resurrected after the persecution," just like, like the beast does, right? "And a great fear fell on those who saw them." So it's kind of, day of the Lord kind of stuff. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." So who is this loud voice of heaven saying, "Come up here"? Is it the Ancient of Days? Is it the Son of Man? And they went up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies watched them. A cloud, just like the Son of Man. So you have these witnesses that have the Son of Man language. You have, the Son of Man probably, saying, "Come up here," and they become cloud riders, and they're going up to the throne, like they're being called up there. So it's in the middle of an oppressive Jerusalem,
See it.
and people are going to see this, yeah, and freak out,
We don't just disappear.
And then at that hour, there was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city fell. Just like there was a great earthquake in Jerusalem when Jesus died, right? Right? So, like, again, these echoing of events that are, you see this with Christ, but then you start seeing these, an echoing with Stephen, and all these motifs, being transferred to Stephen. And then you see these motifs going here, like over to the, uh, how come it does this every time now? So you get this, like this echoing of these things happening again with, the two witnesses and the cloud language. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's just a lot of parallels. Yeah.
I think it's interesting
Yeah.
that they resurrect after 3.5 days,
Yeah.
because it's like spoken of the tribulation being 3.5
3.5 years,
of
right?
the saints being.
Yeah, and here's okay. Remember, like it said that they have the ability to shut up the rain, like, and you're like, that's like Elijah, right?
Elijah.
But Elijah, it doesn't say this in the Old Testament, but it says this two times in the New Testament, that Elijah prayed basically, and there was no rain for 3.5 years. So there's another connection there that you're going. There's a 3.5 period that and I'm going. I've read some. I of course I read some things about it. I'm not really sure uh, about those things, but there is a connection between the 3.5 and the 3.5 of tribulation. So there's something going on there with that. And I can't claim to have any clue about that. Yeah, really. Um, but yeah, that two witnesses thing is really dense, because when you look at Zechariah and you're going, wait, who are these? Who are these two? The two olive trees? And most commentators will say Joshua the high priest and Zerubbabel, the guy who's in charge. And a lot of them make mention. So you have a priestly figure, and you have like a leading king figure. So the priest and king theme again there. Um, then is that who that is, or it was
Wasn't it, I thought I was talking about Elijah and was it Moses?
yeah, well, people are looking at Elijah and Moses because of the nature of the things that they're able to do, right? Um, but it doesn't fit with but like what's the Zechariah thing have to do with it? Um, and then Michael Heiser and some others think, like the two witnesses are basically a symbol for the believers. So that there's going to be, and some people have said, well, the church and Israel. Um, and so, um, boy, there's a lot of traffic in that passage, and in all of Revelation. It's just like I said, Revelation almost seems like all of the major themes of the Bible put in a blender, and and you're going, wow, well, it's pretty dizzying. Um, but I like that, like where you have them being persecuted in Jerusalem and being killed in Jerusalem, which is called Sodom and Egypt. And then later, Mystery Babylon, it says where that great city where the prophets were killed. And you're going, where were the prophets killed? They were killed in Jerusalem. So you could make a case to say Mystery Babylon, if you're going to say that it's a particular city, is Jerusalem. I think it's a bigger thing than just Jerusalem. I also think it's Rome. I also think it's this, there's themes that kind of like sound like a number of different things, but it's the same thing. When Jesus was crucified, yeah, it was Rome that did it, but it was also Jerusalem, and in the end times, it's going to be, there's going to be something that happens between um, a great religious authority, could be the church. I don't know, could be. Um, uh, I mean, that might be what's most appalling to John. What's interesting, you got to keep this in mind though, is that the 10 horns that are in the beast, that are on the beast uh, in Revelation, they actually tear Mystery Babylon to pieces. So they're her enemy. She rides the beast, but she's eventually killed by the beast. So, so that makes me think, well, then that could be something like Jerusalem, or because they were acting on behalf of the beast when they killed Christ, but eventually the Roman authorities, they turn around and they go after them. They end up getting it from Rome, right? So that could be like another kind of like in the future, some kind of echoing thing where there is religious authority that are against the true saints of God, and act like the beast, but eventually the beast turns on them too. Something like that. So a lot of things to keep in mind. Anyway, that was a lot. But we went long today. But I'm gonna have to kind of like do a recap of this or something. I wasn't gonna go into all that. Here, I'm gonna stop this now.